What is going on, you guys? Today I have another quick video review for you. This one is from Michael Bordenaro, and the title is The Collapse of Everyday Life in America Has Begun. Let's get into it.
Feel like pretty much everybody can relate to a video title and topic like this because that's exactly what's happening. The collapse of everyday life in America as we know it has begun. And I think it has already begun a couple of years ago when things started getting really expensive. Because right now, there is no doubt about it that the American economy is struggling. And you don't have to look at charts or the government reports to know that. All you got to do is look at your wallet and your most recent bank statement and you'll know it. And I want to go over some real life examples of things that are happening to people out there that is making it impossible to live life in a normal way anymore. Because people aren't just worried about inflation anymore. They're worried about keeping the lights on. They're worried about paying the rent. They're worried about putting the food on the table. And if you saw my video from yesterday, now you got to be worried about keeping the water flowing through the taps in your house because that's getting too expensive. So let's go over what are some of the big picture and high level problems that are causing all of this to begin with. Well, inflation is probably public enemy number one that continues to be a problem and has been going up according to the most recent inflation reports. Taxes, they also keep rising. Interest rates remain elevated, but they might be coming down soon, which we'll talk about in a second. The national debt keeps on climbing with probably no end in sight. And on top of all of that, wages are stagnating, and a lot of people fear that AI is about to undercut pay even more by automating millions of American jobs. So the message that all of this sends to the average working American is that unless you are already wealthy right now, then the system is completely rigged against you. And I would have to agree, guys, like getting wealthy from scratch today is easier than it's ever been, but also harder than it's ever been.
I watched a video the other day where people were getting upset, like in the US, about how their electricity bill was starting to creep up more and more and more. That's not to mention other things like rent and other aspects. But like some people were like, oh yeah, now it's 150, 200, 300. This one lady was like, 2 months ago, my electricity bill was like $1,100, so 1,100. And then this month we brought it down to like 880, which is crazy because that's like almost rent or half rent in places in the US. Like you might pay like 1,500 for rent somewhere, probably. Might be like a okay average. Even that might be on like a low end. And just think like you're almost paying that same amount in electricity, let alone like other bills. And this would be a good time to tell you, in case you're interested in the digital nomad remote thing, people are paying anywhere between, on the low end, like 100, 150, 250 would be like a decent spot, like some places in like Vietnam, Philippines, Thailand, probably in Latin America too. I'm not sure about like Africa and Romania. By the way, there's good areas that people like. So the safety aspect, people blow that out of proportion in terms of like a Western perspective. They'll be, oh, isn't it dangerous in Colombia? But it's funny because people from Colombia or other countries would always ask me, isn't it dangerous in America? Think about that, because it's what they see of us. And there's so many really kind people in these places too. I'm saying all that to say, like, you could pay for a decent place in like Bangkok, Thailand, 12-month lease, $450 a month. Think about that for rent compared to what you're paying in the US. Let's keep going with the video.
And what I mean by that is there are more opportunities than ever that can make you wealthy, but the definition of wealthy also, and the bar of what wealthy actually is, has been raised so high that it almost seems unattainable. I've told this story a bunch of times on the channel, but when I was a kid, if you had $1 million, you were set. You could retire and sail off into the sunset and never have to work again. And for some people, that would still be the case even today in 2025. But we all know that the $1 million today doesn't go anywhere near as far as it did 30 years ago. And for anybody who is wondering, I am walking along the Shoreline Trail, at least a small section of it here in China Camp State Park. And so this past week, the Fed had its annual meeting at Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and Jerome Powell gave his speech, and he hinted at the Fed possibly lowering interest rates at their next meeting in September. And of course, if they do this, get ready for inflation to get a whole lot worse, guys, because it has been on the rise for the past few readings, and having interest rate cuts right now at a time when inflation is still going up, it's basically a guarantee it's going to rise. I know some of the real smart economists out there, including my friend Adam that I had on the show the other day, he even mentioned that he believes the inflation reading's going to go down due to the cost of housing coming down now. But I don't think that's going to be enough to sway it, because there are so many other things that are going up, especially at very high rates right now, that it's going to outweigh any small reduction in the cost of housing. That's my thoughts. So one thing that's causing this collapse of American life is the utility bills are completely out of control, guys. In Missouri, one woman said that her electric bill came in at $830 this month, and that was lower than last month's bill of $1,130, okay? And for perspective, that's more than her mortgage payment. That's probably more than a lot of people's mortgage payment. Another family reported having a $560 electric bill in June and a $650 bill in July, and they're going to be forking out over $2,000 in just electric bills in the span of just 3 months. A lot of people have been calling their utility companies thinking that there must be some kind of mistake because my bill has never been this high before. And then they're saying, no, that's the right amount. You're being charged the right amount. This is correct. Just like what's happening with people with the water bills. Like, what? Since when did the electric bill become a mortgage payment or more than your car payment, guys? When did the water bill become so unaffordable that you might not be able to run the water in your house? And we're talking regular size houses here have $700 per month water bills, okay? We're not talking mansions. These are people with modest houses. And who can afford that? People who live in a modest house usually live in a modest house for a reason because that's what they can afford. And getting a $700 utility bill of any kind is probably not feasible. I mean, it would already be expensive if all of your utility bills combined were $700 a month, let alone just one of them. And it's all kinds of bills, guys. It's electric, it's water, it's gas, the sewer, the trash pickup, recycling, you name it. And so naturally, a lot of people are starting to fall behind on these bills because they're getting too far out of control. Many people are only paying the absolute essentials like the water, the electric, and the gas and falling behind on the rest. That's probably why you see delinquencies on all forms of debt right now skyrocketing. We got delinquencies on auto loans, on mortgages, on credit card payments, and student loans all on the rise right now. So the bills that people are skipping are the medical bills. They're skipping the mortgage payment or the rent payment, or they're skipping the credit card payment because those are things that you can skip right now and not have immediate consequences. You know, it takes months in some cases to get evicted. It takes sometimes over a year to get foreclosed on if you own a house. Medical bills, nothing's going to happen to you for a long time until that goes to collections, and maybe they start garnishing your wages a few years later down the road. Same thing with credit cards. In fact, a lot of people have been admitting lately that they've been skipping all kinds of bills lately, and surprisingly, the creditors have been quiet and haven't been hounding people too heavily right now, probably because they know that people don't have the ability to pay them. Take a look at this chart right here that shows you what's going on with the household bill situation. Only 55% of household bills are being paid on time, 30% are being paid late, and 15% just aren't getting paid altogether right now. So people are literally paying half of their bills on time, or half of them at all. In the original video that I referenced at the beginning of my video, there's a clip of a handyman talking about what's going on with his business right now. He says that he normally gets steady side jobs and he hasn't had a single job in 14 days, which means 2 weeks of no work, and he has good reviews, lots of experience. And the reason for this, people are trying to do everything themselves right now rather than hire somebody for help because it's not cheap to hire somebody. And if you got more time than money, well, then it makes more sense to put the effort in on your own. You have home inspection companies that are becoming desperate for work because, listen, no one's buying a house, right? The home sale numbers are as low as they've been in the past 30 to 40 years. And so home inspection companies are coming out of the woodwork and cold calling their old clients and begging them for work, you know, asking them for referrals, saying, hey, if you have anybody, please think about us because we need the business right now. That even reminds me of a comment I saw the other day from one of my viewers. I apologize, I don't remember who it was from, but it was something along the lines of, you know, I've been in the mortgage industry in Las Vegas for the past 17 years, and the amount of loans I'm doing right now is only a small fraction of what I was doing just a few years ago. And everybody keeps saying that the economy is resilient. That's what you keep hearing Jerome Powell and the Trump administration.
And that's a scam, by the way, too, is taking out mortgage loans, even student debt, things like that too. That's a huge one. I mean, like largely kids where their prefrontal cortex isn't fully developed yet, being told that you'll be a failure if you don't go to college now, take out a loan, change your major. It's okay if you don't know what you want to do. You'll figure it out. Pay more. That's nuts. If you know what you want to do, and it's definitely like a doctor or lawyer or whatever, cool. That's perfect. But also, even then, think, do you really want to be a doctor or a lawyer? Or is it because your parents told you? Because a lot of people get into that position and they're like, I don't want to be a doctor. I've been doing this for a while. I don't like it, but I put all this time into it, so I guess I can't quit, right? You get one life. So yes, you can. And you can change to do something that you actually want to do with your life instead of living by what other people told you to do.
Say is that things are great, but somehow we need to cut interest rates because things are so great. And also, if things were so great, then why do Americans believe that we've been in a recession for years now? Oh, that's right, because we actually have been. It's just that the official data isn't reflecting it. I don't agree with the mainstream narrative that it's not a recession until we're told that it is due to the data, guys. I am just not on board with that narrative, and I never will be, because
they're also skewing the data and telling you things are better than they are. Even like the job thing, like there's more jobs than there actually are. So they're skewing the data. Same thing with things that they show like on the news. and stuff like that. So just keep that in mind.
Through all the research I've done on this channel, it has become apparent to me that the data doesn't really matter anymore. The only thing that really matters is what the average person is going through right now. And of course, the general cost of living is rising everywhere across the board, not proportionally, but by different amounts and for different reasons. Like, for example, landlords continue to raise the rent for people even though they can't afford it, although a lot of people have been seeing rent decreases, which is a good thing. Car insurance is one of those things that is definitely going up for basically everybody right now. You couldn't believe the shock when I saw that my most recent car insurance payment actually went down by like $20 or $30 for the 6-month premium. I know it's a small decrease, but I'll take anything at this point. Medical insurance is going to be the big one that's going to hit everybody this year, guys. I did a video about this the other day talking about just how much medical insurance premiums are projected to rise. A lot of people are already feeling them right now. They're already at record highs. We'll get ready for it to go up another 30 to 40% in the next year, because that is coming. That's a guarantee at this point. You got people that thought that they were retired and that they had the good life and everything was all set up, who are now, lying awake in bed at nighttime wondering how they're going to afford the rent or how they're going to make the bills this month, because the bills have gone up far beyond what they thought they were going to be in retirement. I mean, just look at this chart.
Okay, I need to talk about this too. The retirement age is going up. I recently had a friend's dad pass away as soon as he retired, probably around like 65. Yeah, think about that. All the things you wanted to do when you were retired. And by the way, uh, for example, like my grandma was being caretaken for a while, so getting some caregiving, and then she was moved into a senior home, like assisted living, where she gets like pretty consistent care, and it's about $7,000 a month. Absolutely nuts. That's ridiculous. Even if you plan for retirement, did you plan for that? $7,000 a month? Probably not.
Right here that shows you the rising cost of all of these utilities and all these expenses, including the rent, and just how much it has skyrocketed since 2020. It was on a gradual increase before then, but gradual is the word. There's no more gradual increase to this, in case you can't see the right half of the chart. The increases are now exponential, and this has all led to a situation where people cannot save money anymore. Even when people try to do their best and they try to set aside a chunk of their income each month, not touch it, within just a couple of days of saving it, they find out, well, there's an unexpected expense that came up. Now I need to dip into that savings that I thought I was going to put away for the future. And it just makes you wonder, like, how is anybody saving money right now? More and more people now are starting to get on board with this idea that we are in a major recession, maybe even a depression, and that a big economic crash is right around the corner. Because after all, how can this be sustained? But when you really kind of look around and see the metrics that, the Fed and the government and Wall Street use as measurements of our economy, all of those things still look relatively good, especially the stock market hitting all-time highs again, And so many of these guys are just under the impression that if the stock market's doing well, then everything must be great, because there's no way in hell that the stock market would be hitting all-time highs if things weren't great. That is the furthest thing from the truth. Like I have showed you guys on this channel, every time companies announce layoffs, especially big ones, guess what happens to their stock price? It goes up, because now they're going to be cutting costs, they're going to be increasing efficiency, and ultimately that leads to larger profits for these companies, which means a higher share price for them. It's sad to say it, but we now live in a world where bad news is good news for the stock market. People losing jobs and people becoming unemployed or homeless is good news for the stock market, because those are all people that don't need to be paid anymore. But one thing that these big Wall Street companies are missing, especially the AI guys, is those are also all people who can no longer afford to buy your product or service. And eventually, if this happens to enough people, there's going to be nobody left to buy their products or services, and that's when the day of reckoning is going to come. But that could be a while, especially with how much people rely on debt to live their everyday lives these days. And that's another reason why there's been a major collapse in American life as we know it. Because 50 years ago, nobody needed to live off of debt in order to survive. Maybe you had a mortgage 50 years ago that was paid off in 10 or 15 years, and that's it. Now, people need to finance their Grubhub order. So it's normal for people to expect a crash right now.
Even that's ridiculous. Like 10 or 15 years to pay off a mortgage? Like, I get it, like on the average income, the way the system is set up. But imagine giving that much of your life up to pay a debt that you didn't need to pay. Same thing with college, by the way. And that other thing he mentioned, I heard someone talk about that recently, which is pretty crazy to think about. Like the pay as you go, or like getting your paycheck early because you don't have enough money. Like those are two different things. Now, they'll send you your pay early because you can't afford something, or like people are like financing like a pay as you go monthly installments for their Uber Eats or Grubhub order. That is dumb. But that also shows how bad things have gotten. And this is why I talk a lot on this channel about ways to set yourself up to break out of the system. Consider being a remote worker, a digital nomad, living somewhere where it's way, way less expensive and the quality of life goes way, way up. Just saying.
because it seems like that's the only clear way things are headed. We got the inflated stock prices, we got AI taking people's jobs, we got massive stock buybacks that have been happening for decades, and the prices of the market are no longer rooted in fundamentals. They're rooted in buybacks and layoffs and other things that prop up the market. And when the American consumer really is finally tapped out, that's when everything is going to come to a screeching halt, when sales on everything completely collapses. Whether it's by choice because people are pulling back because they don't want to dig themselves into a bigger hole, or they've already dug the biggest hole that they can get themselves into, but their credit has run dry. And everything we just talked about, people not able to afford the utilities, not being able to pay the rent, not being able to save money, and purposefully missing different sorts of obligation payments. This is a collective warning sign from Americans telling you that the current way things are going is completely unsustainable. And that's pretty much the message I've been preaching on this channel for the last few years, really ever since the beginning of 2022, when inflation started becoming a real problem and the housing markets started to show some real bubble behavior. That's when all this came on my radar. Personally, the way that I am handling this sort of thing is I'm not much of a prepper, but I am a saver. I do save a lot of my money, and I also make sure to own real money, which is gold and silver, and I make sure to live well below my means, so that way, if something does happen, then I can still afford my life. And that's always the same kind of message I continue to promote here on the channel, because some people lose their way and they forget what they need to do in order to become successful financially. And that's where my channel kind of comes in to constantly remind you of all the hidden dangers out there when it comes to overspending and basically living beyond your means, when it comes to waiting to buy a house at the right time once you can truly afford it. These are all big things I like people to learn from my videos. So let me know what you learned from today's video down in the comments. Feel free to share your personal experience.
Great video. Go check out his channel, Michael Bordenaro, and subscribe over here. I'm building to 1,000 subscribers right now so I can monetize and start helping more people break out of the system and live a life by design. All right, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.